Hi all, thanks for joining me. Today I actually wanted to have a little look at hair growth, or more importantly, hair loss. I get a lot of women coming in, particularly around hormonal transitions and going through perimenopause and menopause and finding that their hair is falling out and it continues falling out. And at some point, it's not normal for that to occur because we all do lose hair every day. That's fine. But over a prolonged period and greater hair loss than is usual, it quite frankly, it gets really scary and it needs to be stopped. It needs to be identified as a problem, and often the drivers are multifactorial. There can be quite a few of them. But any way we look at it, we need to understand what is normal, and then we can come from that position and find out what is actually going on. So stay tuned. Here we go. So hair takes a long time. As I said, it's very, very common at perimenopause. Um, 52%, half of women transitioning into menopause are going to notice some hair loss. And it's because of our old friend estrogen, amongst other drivers. Unfortunately, there's not just one single driver. So hair growth, okay, there's a couple of different phases, and this is maybe where the more of the answer starts. And there's you can see there the anagen, catagen, telogen, and exogen phases, and they go for sometimes years. So that we've got this anagen phase, which of course the hair growth, and it can be up to 8 years in a hair growth cycle. Then the hair stops for a couple of weeks, stops growing. And how long our hair grows for, or how long our hair can get, is also genetic. I mean, think about, I don't know, I used to have beautifully long hair when I was little, but it's certainly not that anymore. And I really don't think I could grow it that long. But then, of course, at that point, I was shorter. So take it all into consideration and look at the genetics that you're given. If you desperately want curly hair and everyone in your family has got straight hair, there's no way you can grow curly hair. Same thing, you can't have super long hair if that's not in your genes. Um, so that's the bad news out of the way. So catagen and then telogen, and you may have come across telogen effluvium if you've ever gone through hair loss and you're concerned about that. You may have seen a dermatologist and they talk about telogen effluvium, which is accelerated hair loss or accelerated um, hair in that resting phase, which is the next phase here. And then, of course, the hair sheds. Now, if I can just draw your attention to this diagram here, you'll see that the hair is rooted into the scalp, which you must know, but you can see there the blood supply going to the hair follicle. And that's really, really important because one of the drivers for particularly for hair loss is particularly low iron or low ferritin. It could also be some other nutrients that are also contributing, but it's one of the first ports of call is to go, how's the iron going? Now, in someone who's menstruating heavily or they've got a really heavy period, that could be one of the reasons why we start to get the hair loss. So, okay, let's look at the phases a little bit more closely. The anagen phase, as I said, can go up to 8 years, and we want about 90% of our scalp in this anagen phase. We want it to be growing. And of course, in a scalp that's being, there are a lot of drivers if there's low iron or there's low B12 or there's other nutrients that are low, if we've got thyroid implications here, if we've got oxidative stress from a lot of the environmental impacts, and perhaps we're, um, not nourishing our body as well. And one of the primary issues that we'll always see in hair loss is lack of protein or not having adequate amounts of protein. Couple that with our favorite friend, stress, is also going to be one of the main drivers for hair loss. So we want most of our hair in this anagen phase. Then again, it goes into this catagen phase, and for a couple of weeks it stops, it's winding down, but there's still no hair loss at this point. Telogen is when the the hair follicle is in its resting phase, and this is potentially where it's stopped its growing. It's sitting there, it's waiting for the order to jump off the head. And what will happen is in people with hair loss will get more of the hair in this particular phase. Now, around 10 to 15% of our hair is in this phase at any one time. But if more of it gets pushed into this telogen phase, then of course, as I said, we've got more hair loss. And the exogen phase, so losing, 50 to 100 hairs a day is normal. I have never counted. But I guess that you would all have a look at your hairbrushes maybe or the floor and just go, yeah, there's some hair there, but there's not a lot. Now, in women, particularly who are losing their hair, it really does create a great deal more hair that you might find the drains clogging up. You're certainly going to notice it if you're blow drying your hair, and the brushes are getting much thicker with the hair that's all falling out. And this can happen for a couple of months, really, before you start to get a little bit concerned sometimes. So, um, a couple of months worth with the hair, and you can see in this diagram as well, we've got that let the bulb of the hair or the root of the hair is actually starting to let go from the blood supply and the actual attachment into the scalp, and it's going to start getting lost or start falling out. And so just be mindful of this. There are ways of actually, if you've ever been to a dermatologist or you've maybe been to a scalp specialist of some kind, even some beauticians do a scalp therapy, and they've got cameras that can look at the hair follicle. You might find that more hair is in this telogen phase. You might also find what they call the hair follicle miniaturization. So we should have a couple of different strands coming up in these in in the photos here, we've only got one strand coming out of one follicle, but actually what happens, we should have two or three. And so what you might find is you'll have one hair coming from the follicle, not two or three, because the other two have let go. And so that's, again, it's another kind of shedding, and I won't go into that, but it's really important to uh, have a good understanding of what the drivers are for your hair loss. And so I like this, it's biology. Um, and it's not a failed system. So we just need to be mindful of what is happening. So, okay, menopause, thank you. Transitioning through perimenopause and menopause, and you can see how our sex steroid hormones, so our estrogen and progesterone and testosterone to a lesser degree, are actually really depleting, and you can see that decline there. Now, this recalibration of the body because the estrogen is dropping is what is actually one of the drivers that are affecting this telogen phase and leading to more hair falling out. It can also happen as a result of pregnancies. Any time that our hormones are transitioning really from something to something else can be a trigger for the hair loss. Um, the good news is that the hair follicles, even if they're dormant, they are still there. And there's some research going on in Colombia there in America, and they're looking at some immune cells actually being something that we can work with and reactivate this hair growth. Now, as far as I can see, there's not a product that's attached with this research. They're just noticing it, but that's kind of good news, isn't it? And it also speaks to the fact that hair is such a multifaceted. As I said, it's about the nutrition that you've got. It's literally giving you a bit of a report card of your general health. And so if it's falling out, then perhaps, as I said, there are quite a few different ideas there that you may need to address to get the hair supported and to stop it falling out initially, and then obviously to support the regrowth. Well, I can't leave without telling you somewhat, some of the things that you might think of to try and do. And then there is, as I said, quite a few nutrients, particularly low iron. Please don't start supplementing with iron until you know that you are iron deficient. It's really important. Iron is incredibly oxidizing and it can actually do more damage if you are iron replete, if you don't need an iron supplement. So just taking iron because it might help is not a good idea. You need to get tested first, and of course, your naturopath, your nutritionist, GP, of course, can test for those. Vitamin D, also potential, because as I said before, with the immune system, vitamin D is intricately linked with that, and so getting the vitamin D correct, or the correct levels for vitamin D, maybe with a supplement, but I'm more of a fan of safe sun exposure, which I have a few blogs on my website for that if you want to go and read them. Inadequate protein is one of the biggest things. Protein, protein, protein. We really need protein to support hair growth and growth of anything in the body, really. But and making sure that we've got a good amount that's adequate for our height, weight, and age. Um, Having a healthy scalp barrier and microbiome, and you might need to consider the hair shampoo that you're using. You might speak to your hairdresser and possibly find some that are more appropriate for you. There's a lot of chemicals in shampoos, and sodium lauryl sulfate, SLS, is one of the ones that are really common, and that also can be quite toxic. So toxicity is not good for hair loss or for scalp support. So consider the products that you're using. There are some interesting, topical applications, particularly rosemary oil can be supportive. So just consider that. Um, Manage the stress. Stress is always going to push the follicles and release the hair more quickly than anything else. And understanding and supporting women through stressful times is one of the things I do every single day of the week. And stress looks different for different people, and it's at different times. And what happens is it usually disrupts a lot of processes in the body, but particularly sleep, which of course, leads to even feeling worse. So understanding that and getting a really good plan for that is a central part of hair support. Hair is really metabolically active. You might not think it because well, I don't know what you think, but it sort of looks like it's just going to be, you know, not need an awful lot. But it really needs an energy dense diet. So it needs lots and lots of phytonutrients, I beg your pardon, from really colorful food. So as many colorful vegetables as you can possibly get in are going to be really helpful. That's going to give you the vitamin C and vitamin E, things like avocados and nuts and seeds and, a whole food diet. Let's face it, that is what we really need, and we need to nourish our body from the inside. Lowering the exposure to toxins, even, pollution of any kind or secondhand smoke. Hopefully you're not around that. And anything that's going to be oxidizing to or lead to oxidative stress in the body, any chemicals. If you are coloring your hair, you may consider trying to do that in a more natural way that potentially could aggravate the oxidative stress in the hair and, of course, lead to hair loss as well. And I've also mentioned being really calm, and there are so many tools that can be helpful with that. So I hope that gives you some information about the hair growth and what happens, and then also what we can do in order to be able to support ourselves. Now, overall, of course, if you're transitioning through into menopause and through perimenopause and menopause, there are multifactorial things that need to be addressed. And of course, that's really well done in a consultation. If you wanted to come and see me, you're most welcome. If you want to come and have it, just give me a call, a discovery call. Ring and find out. We can have a short conversation about it. There's absolutely no pressure and no obligation, but I can speak with you and tell you if I think I'm able to help, and I can certainly perhaps send you in the right direction if I think I can't. So maybe that's something that you might like to avail yourself of. Next week, I'm actually going to take a little bit of a change in tact and go and look at grief as we transition through into menopause. So I'm hoping that that might be of interest to you. And I really look forward to hearing from you. If you want to let me know what you think of this video, if you feel like there's somebody else that might be helped by this, I'd love it if you'd share them and leave me a comment.